I think what we've done is really tried to work with NBAA, work with you guys and each other to find the best common practices, put this in here, and so that we can all be on the same page.
Welcome aboard the 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast.
Rock on. You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots.
I looked back at them and I said, I don't think we're at the right airport. And they go, I don't think we are either.
Each episode, we bring you fascinating conversations with industry experts.
I think I should be a go-to on how to deal with 63, 64-year-old men.
You're going to chase it like a dog chasing a school bus.
But we're not just about the serious stuff. We're here to have fun.
And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise.
It's a whole thing.
The 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast is your destination for everything aviation, whether you're cruising in the flight levels or just starting your journey. Max, we are so excited to have a couple of guests joining us today to talk about NBAA's new Standard Operating Procedures Manual that was just released, just announced at base here a couple months ago, and coming soon to business aviation, to a training center near you, to your simulator next time you go to training. So today we are going to welcome Brian Small, who's the Director of Regulatory Affairs for FlightSafety. And also joining us is Tim Schoenauer, the Senior Director of Global Training Solutions at CAE. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Max. It's good to be here with you.
Hey, guys.
So, Max and I have talked on the show many times about training and some of the things that we really like in business aviation, and also comparing that to what it's like to be a pilot in a more structured 121 or 135 operation. And we've mentioned, man, there's a lot of SOPs, there's a lot of standardization that exists at the air carrier level that maybe doesn't exist in business aviation. And we've both relied on that foundation from the air carrier side in our business aviation careers to kind of that strong foundation. And we've always wished there was something like that for business aviation, and recognizing that there's hundreds and thousands of operators, in individual silos in business aviation. That's a tough ask, but NBAA, CAE, FlightSafety, a lot of folks have gotten together to try and actually move the ball forward on some standardization in business aviation. So, Brian, I'm kind of curious if you could tell us, how did the ball get rolling here, and what have you guys created?
All right. Well, thanks. Well, thanks again for having us. It's a great podcast. As a new convert and new fan of it, I really appreciate what you guys do for the business aviation community. For us, for me and for FlightSafety, this has kind of been a passion project for a really long time. And, I got to hand it to CAE as well. The groups that we participate in, these are the training providers that are there with you guys in the industry and the regulators, trying to make aviation safer, right? In every aspect we can. So as far as the history of this is really interesting, right? And so part of this is born out of what you just said. It's that air carrier logic, that requirement to have that consistency and standardization across your entire fleet when you're working in that environment. And that was the ACT-ARC, so the Air Carrier Training Aviation Rulemaking Committee. That was stood up in 2014, and luckily FlightSafety and CAE were both able to join that group on the steering committee, and then participate in a lot of action teams and the working groups that come out of that. So back in 2015, so kind of a year in, one of the primary focuses was just this, right? It's that standardization of the curriculums when you guys come into training as an air carrier operator. In this case, come to train FlightSafety, come train at CAE, you have this expectation of quality, consistency. We're meeting your training program, following your checklist, following your procedures. So that recommendation went out. It was worked on, the standardized curriculum. You guys may have heard about that. We had a really concerted effort that came in around 2020. And of course, part of that, guys, is development of an SOP. So as everyone knows, if you're an air carrier operator, it's a mandate. You have to have a standard operating procedure. It's in rule. It's in AC, 9071. So we had sub team kind of working on that, right? As far as developing the SOP. But the bigger picture here is this was a time where we had this collaboration of training providers, and where perhaps CAE and flight safety weren't really communicating, really working in the same space. We had a couple of opportunities with this group and other where our teams began working together, and not to discount other training providers as well. We're also collaborating on this. And some of that back in 2015 is remember when the NTSB had the 10 most wanted, that was kind of a thing. I think it was just retired last year or something. They had procedural compliance as the top 10. In that year is the same thing, the same time that this directive went out. So if we kind of fast forward, standardized curriculum for the quality of the effort, right? We had a lot of time, treasure, investment put in there. The implementation complexities, and I would say that kind of the competing priorities derailed that effort a little bit, but it doesn't mean that all the work and effort that went in didn't have positive impact. And one of those positive things was CAE and flight safety and others, working together, collaborating with industry, with regulators on the SOP. So, what Tim said in the beginning is we came to sort of this impasse, and then us or Mia kind of took up the mantle a bit with the SOP. We began working on taking some of that information, beginning collaboration. We started working with training providers, working with you guys in industry to formulate that SOP manual and that concept of collaboration and consistency across training providers. And one of the things that, if you guys were at base, one of the things I said is that the two things that are unprecedented that we came up with in just in the last couple of years is that we don't compete on safety. We shouldn't compete on safety, so that we have that out there for you guys. And then if we're working together on common industry safety goals, we're stronger, right? And we make a better training environment for you guys out there, regardless of your operation. So that was kind of the genesis of how we got today. A lot of time investment. I mean, you think about it, it's really a 10-year process to get us to where we have it today with NBAA support.
Wow. Yeah. Just thinking about it, that's when we would talk about it on the show, I'm like, this sounds really good when we say it. Just, we can make a lot of really good points, but actually putting pen to paper and getting this done is a whole nother thing. And I've thought about that after we've discussed it on the show. I'm like, man, that is like, because you can't just copy it like from the airlines. And then the other thing too is that like at the airlines, we're operating a few types of aircraft, whatever. Like this is built for everybody, operating all kinds of airplanes all over the world. Like the scope is so broad to try and standardize that much variety is even more of a challenge, I think. And then you have to do it and keep in mind that this is kind of a voluntary adoption thing, right? Like it's not mandated. The FAA hasn't said everybody has to have this like they have with the air carriers. So then you have to make it where it's also kind of easy to digest and get people to buy in. And I thought about that and I'm like, wow, that's like a serious. So when you say, everyone who's listening is probably like, oh, 15 years, like when you stop and you think about it, it's a major undertaking. Like, and I'm just scrolling through this now, and it is very well done and very comprehensive. I mean, like everything from, call outs and the stuff you would expect to like intervention by a crew member, just it's got a lot, man. It's really, really good. So good work, you guys. That's it's really impressive.
Thanks. I mean, we're really proud of it. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tim. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to compliment that as well, and just echo the same thing, Brian, which is, we are proud of it. And it was an effort of many, including a lot of other operators too, that helped contribute to it. EJM, Solaris, Jet Aviation, as you mentioned, other air carriers. Those are just some of those names of the people that also committed from a time perspective to give it. But, there's a lot of challenges that business aviation faces that the airlines don't. I was at an air carrier overseas working at Etihad Airways, and we had 134 different cultures. And when you have that amount of the differences in experience as well as different cultural expectations, it's kind of the SOPs that get you by from a safety perspective. And if you look at business aviation, not only the operational environment that we operate in, but also some of the unique challenges nowadays in regards to people using more contract pilots. So you have no experience previously flying with this person, or even the disparity of experience in crew members as the airlines are soaking up some of business aviation as they continue to hire. And we're facing probably the biggest pilot shortage in the next over the next 10 years, with a lot of other job reports from Boeing, Airbus, and including CAE as well, that forecast over 1.5 million aviators, which includes maintenance technicians, cabin crew, and pilots, will be needed in that time frame because of retirements alone. So it really was an important time for this type of document to come along. And great point about adoption, because it is voluntary. But I think that one of the big pieces and takeaways is that you've got two of the larger training providers shoulder to shoulder saying, we have to implement this. This is the time for us to make sure that we have a safety net so that all of those reasons, from cultural diversity to lack of experience, or experience gradients, let's put it that way, and some of the challenges that we'll continue to face are being mitigated. And by introducing topics to some that may not be familiar with threat and error management and some of the risk and resource modules that have been put into here in simple acronyms, we're giving hopefully tools to pilots that will use them, because not because we're telling them that they should, or not because they're going to experience that from our instructors and examiners as they come through, but more so because they should have a standard. They should have something to reference that would provide that consistency that the airlines have benefited for decades.
And I think, a lot of people's mindset, there's an argument to be made that the need for standardization is not as great when you fly with the same person all the time. So when you think of a Part 91 flight department, it's two, in Dylan and I case, it's myself and another pilot that fly together most of the time, right? And so some people will argue, yeah, well, we don't really need this stuff, which is not true. You do need structure, and you do need SOPs, and you do need a framework there. It's just better, and it is safer. But one of the riskiest things, I think, in business aviation is when you are a Part 91 person, and your person you're used to flying with goes on vacation, and you get a contract pilot in that you've never flown with. And that's, at the airlines, I fly with people all the time I've never flown with, and sometimes I have, and there's zero difference because we all do it the same. And that's where the framework, you lean on that, and just like Tim was saying at his airline, I mean, that framework is necessary. That's what gets you through. But in Part 91, when you fly with somebody who's, the only thing you have in common is that you've both been, done the V1 cut in the simulator,
right,
or whatever.
You have a type rating,
right?
From,
and then you go and you fly. Like I've done. I'm speaking anecdotally because of this. I've been in this position where you fly someone the first time, and then you go somewhere and the weather's crappy, and you're flying an approach, and you don't really know what everyone's kind of doing. And it's a very loose environment. It's very high risk. It just is, and like that's where this stuff will be super helpful. Is if you have that framework that translates across other operators. So when you sit in the airplane with somebody for the first time, there's that framework there to lean on, like we do at the airlines, because we're flying, with 12,000 of my, closest friends over there. And it's really important, and it puts you at a real high risk. And I think we've gotten away with it for a long time in business aviation, just kind of doing whatever, and which is for real, like kind of whatever, like that day, or that how we do it compared to how you do it, or whatever. But
well, the problem is that for so many operators, as small operators, the time, hey, make an operating manual, make a bunch of call outs. There's people who are like, I've got 10 million other things on my plate. To sit down and do this and reinvent the wheel for every single operation that's a real challenge. And now that chief pilot left. Now we got to bring new chief pilot in. Oh, I don't like this. I mean, so there's just all these different headaches that you could have. So I think I salute the industry to kind of bring this product out to everybody to be able to adopt, because to create it internally is just I don't think there's any feasible way to do that. So here's the game plan, guys. I want to talk a little bit about what an SOP guide is and kind of what's in it. And then maybe a couple of the concepts you mentioned, Tim, like TEM, threat and error management, maybe some CRM stuff, what we talk about there. Then I want to shift gears and talk about, okay, how are we actually going to implement this? How do I implement this at my company? And then what am I going to start to see at the training center when I go to recurrent or initial next? And sort of like what we see is the future. So those are kind of the highlights that I want to make sure we hit on today. So Brian, maybe you could just start us off by explaining, does an SOP replace your AFM or your GOM, or what is this document and how am I going to fit it in with all of the other publications that we have?
Sure. It's a great question. And as you know, pilots and especially instructor pilots are completely devoid of opinion and malleable to any change, right?
Right,
And so,
of course.
so, obviously a lot goes into that. So the manufacturers, they'll produce an aircraft, they produce an AFM, they produce the suggested procedures, certainly. It's not that some of those procedures you can't revise for your own. There's a suggestion in the initiation. And certainly there's aircraft specific things, right? I mean, we get into abnormal and emergency. That is not this. That is not what we produce, right? That's going to be aircraft specific. And then for us thinking of an industry-wide aircraft agnostic SOP, we're talking about that common SOP that we should all be on the same page to have the same mental model for, so that we increase that safety. So for us, as far as that, your question is, does it supplant the other? No, it doesn't supplant your GOM, your AFM. It is the ability to take that common side of that communication, that structure. So not only the common callouts, but also common procedural logic for safe operation. So that's what we've collaborated on, is develop that side of it, right? And where the SOP touches into that aircraft specific or manufacturer, specific space, we advise as such in that SOP manual. So you'll see that break point where you transition over. And from a training provider, what we'll do is we'll adopt this as the core standard until it hits that aircraft specific program. And then whether it's CAE or FlightSafety, you've got either the manufacturer's publication or you have, the training provider's iteration, of those maneuvers and procedures that are specific to that phase of flight, right? So think about this is that common mental model development standard that covers across your fleet. You operate multiple aircraft in your flight department. You want to make sure that's same, and that when that contract pilot comes in, you have that same page, same call out. So you're not in the weather, like you were saying, Max, for that first leg, where the first couple of legs with the contract pilot is, regardless of how well you do that initial briefing, you're going to miss something. You're going to catch that all. There's that kind of like learning each other as that contract pilot develops, adapts to your operation. So that's kind of the bridge. We tried to stay really focused on common call outs that we see, from the industry, obviously taken from, Southwest. Like I have connection with friends at Southwest, friends at United Airlines, at Alaskan, where you guys have done some really amazing work industry-wise, as far as that. But also, in the industry as a whole, you'd be surprised some of the 91 operations are really adept at procedural compliance and development and implementation. And I would say, from Tim and I's perspective as well, we've seen a lot of this, across the cultures, like Tim was saying, across flight departments. So I think what we've done is really tried to work with NBAA, work with you guys and each other to find the best common practices, put this in here, and so that we can all be on the same page.
Yeah, and I just pulled up one item as an example, which is stabilized approach, right? And I think most pilots know that there is different concepts about, okay, well, we're going to be at a ref plus this at this altitude, or and companies have something different, but I think a lot of companies don't have anything. And I imagine it's frustrating from the training center side when you're sitting in the back of the sim and you have a student that, well, I got the airplane on the ground, and you're like, yeah, but you were like ref plus 30 and we weren't stable until 100, and there hasn't been that thing that you could really point to in the past. And I remember from my airline days, and I'm sure you still see this, Max, like if you shoot an approach and you break that stabilized approach criteria, it doesn't matter if the plane is on the ground safely. Like, that's not going to be a satisfactory maneuver. And so I think, being able to put some actual numbers into this and remove some of the ambiguity, that's just one example here of sort of how you can move the industry forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the top safety threats from NBAA or even IATA, they haven't changed much, right? Your runway excursions, loss of control in flight, those are key elements. So to your point, you're right on. And of course, what's the behavior we all do? I actively fly as well. And for landings, of course, you want to try to grease it on the runway. So that, of course, inevitably leads to long landings. So the behaviors we see in the simulator, they don't mind so much if it's a firm or if it's a soft landing, but in real life, unfortunately, that's a behavior that is not repeated in the sim, and then you allow yourself to kind of slip into some bad habits, right? So to your point, what a fantastic opportunity to have some thresholds very clearly defined so that you can have a conversation with your other pilots. And Dylan mentioned, how do we integrate this? How is this adopted into flight departments? And I think first it starts, of course, with awareness, and then maybe a quick read and detuning of what this is supposed to be, which is it's not there to replace what's in front of you from the OEM's perspective. It's meant to supplement so that we have some boundaries and guidelines to assure the operation that we have is safe, to have a better conversation when you are unstabilized, to encourage a go around. And in addition to stabilized approach, which you pulled out of the document, I've really also kudos to FlightSafety for sharing some key information which had been proprietary to latest touchdown point and assuring that there's a well-established in the briefing point at which you're committing to landing by or you're going around. And that's critical and key. And that came from a lot of really good scientific research by Presagius and FlightSafety and the CJP group. So there's another good example of how, this document has benefited not only from that work, but also from decades of the airlines to find those common SOPs and put them into this document as our first go. Mind you, this is all about continuous improvement. And if someone does get hung up on something, it's important that they have the opportunity to make a note and say, hey, this is why that might need to be corrected. And then guess what? We'll take a look at that. And within an implementation period, which we'll probably expand a little bit more about, we'll then make that change. So I think it's a great step in being definitive to your point. And it's I think it's really up to us to start having those conversations. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? What came out of that for you? Just to start having that conversation about the benefits of something like this.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I read this too, is like the SOPs. You guys really, went for it here on version 1, which is impressive. Like I said, because exactly like Tim's saying, the latest touchdown point briefing is like one of the most valuable ones you can do, because and that's where, and this is a really good example of why these are so important, because it's those times when you're flying an approach with the new contract pilot and it's right down at minimums, and he sees the approach lighting system, right? So you can go to 100 feet. Well, like, dude, you don't have time to be like, oh, I think like you have to be expecting one of several things to hear, so you know what your next move is. And that's to say, it's the exact same thing with the latest touchdown point. Like if you don't land at your intended point, 1,000 to 1,500 feet down the runway, well, when do you need to go around? How much further can you keep floating? Like, everybody
the aim
floats
point's
a little
behind us. Yeah, we don't even
everybody
know.
floats a little past the touchdown zone once in a while, but how much is acceptable? When can you, and that's the thing. You can't be figuring that out when you're, 140 knots, 2 feet above the ground, trying to decide if you need to go around or not. Like, that's where this stuff becomes, potentially life or death. And that's where, beyond just the call outs and the procedures and the stabilized approach criteria, like the fact that you guys have the latest touchdown point calculation and all that is like, I did not expect to see that in here.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Like,
I've been jealous because Max has talked about that on the show several times, with the Southwest has that. And it's like, that's something I really wanted to implement into our operation. Say, hey, look, if we pass taxiway Delta 3, we got to go, and that's, I think, a super valuable. And honestly, I don't know a lot of operators that use that right now. in Part 91 in
Yeah,
folks
and
that I know.
if you operate, we go into like Hawthorne and places
Yeah.
like that are short, and it's real important then.
Yeah.
Like it's not such a big deal at Denver. It's 16,000 foot long runway, but even still, there's a go around point that
Yeah.
and so
That's right.
it's good stuff. Gets me excited.
Let's take a quick break to tell you about a friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. Tim is a certified financial planner who specializes in helping professional pilots chart a smarter financial course. Whether you're focused on retirement, investment management, or strategic tax planning, Tim brings the tools and insight to help you make the most of your career and beyond. He's also the host of the Pilot's Portfolio podcast, where he breaks down real-world financial strategies designed specifically for pilots. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life.
And it's good also to have these conversations, and I also worked in small flight departments as well. You don't know how to sometimes bring up some of these topics. And then if you're in a professional organization, even still, if you guys are mates and you're the same age and everything is the same, you've been flying together for years, these are still topics. Every one of them, these points that we're talking about, stabilized approach criteria, they actually have something definitive. Altitude callouts and what that means, whether that's going to be a revision for your team or if it's something that you've been doing. And then, of course, the landing distance assessment piece. These are all great talking points for not just you as crew members that are working with the same organization, but really for us as training providers, because we don't necessarily know everyone's SOPs. Sometimes they're not documented or written. And you can imagine we have thousands of customers. So for the instructor realistically to have an expectation of opening your documentation and find out, what is their stabilized approach criteria? Of course, that's in the preparation side of things. But if it's a standardized SOP globally, literally globally, wow, we're all speaking from that same sheet of music. And then we can have more intelligent, better conversations, hold ourselves to higher standards, which of course equals safety. And that even transcends training providers, which I think is exactly what the industry needs more of.
And I think the other thing too that you can't overlook is that one of the most important parts things that I've done, and I think that everybody should, is the debrief right after the flight. Like instead of just grabbing your stuff and heading out, like you should take a look at yourself and have an honest conversation with the person you flew with and how that went. Well, this provides a framework of which to hold yourself accountable to and how to essentially grade yourself and maintain a standard, because you're like, oh yeah, everything went pretty good. I don't know, but you could say like, oh, we missed the call out crossing the final approach waypoint, crossing height, we did or whatever. But now you have something to hold yourself to a higher standard against in that debrief. And I think that's going to be super important in the implementation of this, because no one's going to get it right at first. It's going to take a minute. It always does. Like at the airlines, where I work, we just implemented this new SOP with new call outs that are new to us. It's a whole thing. They send out this video thing we got to watch. We read all this stuff. We got to sign and say and everyone's just like, initially is just exhausted. They're like, why do we got to do which is what I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this are thinking, like, oh, why do I want to do this? But then you don't have a choice is the difference. At the airlines, you don't have a choice. This
Right.
It is what
Right.
it is. Like, one of the this Czech Airman standards guy I was flying with recently put it very good when he was like, with new pilots, he goes, if somebody said they were going to pay you $10 million and all you had to do was what this book said, would you do it? And they're like, well, yeah, duh. And he's like, that's essentially what we're asking you here. Your lifetime career earnings are going to be about this and blah, blah. And here's the book. You just got to do it by the book. It's very little left in interpretation. You just have to do it. And so, but here it's going to take a little more discipline, I think, to get to that point.
Yeah.
And but that's a good challenge. That's going to be a real good call to action. And at the end of the day, dude, that's what's going to separate the operators that are top tier and the rest. It's going to, separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, because this is not easy. It is not fun, but it is important, and people just have to realize that.
Yeah, and
Sure.
change management is going to be well, definitely. You got the next word here, Brian. But I was just going to say, change management of this whole thing is going to be impressive, right? And so, winning hearts and minds, I think, is how when it's not your employer telling you this is how you shall, it's winning the hearts and minds to find the value. But the good thing is, because the training providers are committed to it, that we are providing that opportunity. So at least once or twice a year, depending on how frequently they train, they're going to hear this standard. And hopefully they'll eventually get inquisitive enough to want to pick it up and want to adopt more or learn more in the future would be the goal. But even for us, from instructor standpoint, we've 36 different countries and about a little over 10 different training centers and about 19 aviation approvals. I mean, this is a huge rollout for us. Over 1,000 instructors this will have to reach. So getting it right inside the schoolhouse too is going to be a challenge, let alone industry adoption. So Brian, over to you.
I don't know. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, right on. That's what we see. There's 193 civil aviation authorities in the world. Tim and I probably train about 150, 160 of those, and we've got approvals and many. And you think about the number of crews that come through and really live under kind of a KO banner, FAA banner, right? But we see a lot. We see a lot of the change. We know how change is very difficult, and certainly in the schoolhouse where we have to take this on and we have to hold ourselves accountable to it first. And then, as you said in the beginning, it's voluntary, but what we have to do is kind of win the hearts and minds, encourage how this has a huge impact on safety. It's going to carry with you for your career. We're holding ourselves accountable to it. We're going to take those steps to make sure that our instructors have it as a focus point. We continually put that in front of them through various methodologies, through quality assessment, through encouragement internally. And so that way, when they're working with the crews, it's not a punitive measure, it's an encouragement, right? So we're in the sim, we're showing you these tools, we're giving you the right tools for safety, which is this SOP, which, just like you said, the latest touchdown point, I think is game changing. If we can properly focus on that in the schoolhouse, then I think we can have a real impact on the runway excursions that we're seeing out there.
So let's say I'm at a medium-sized flight department. I've got 4 or 5 airplanes. We already have an SOP. We have invented the wheel for us. Now this thing comes along. I'm the head of safety, or maybe the chief pilot or the DO. What am I going to do?
Right. So good question, right? So we a lot of us are passionate about what we do and kind of what the experience that we have. We've developed these procedures in our departments that have kind of worked. And certainly there's things that are going to be department specific, right? That based on your type of operation that you bring in. But I think what you'll find is you're going to be coming to the training provider once or twice a year. The best impact is for us to bring in the same page for the commonalities of SOP. And Tim and I will tell you, we look at a lot of these because we see, a lot of departments will come in, they'll put it through, the client-specific files that dispatch to our instructors that they're supposed to use to prepare to train with you. So we can kind of see the deltas and we can begin that conversation, right? So I think it's that over time thing. We'll begin to sort of work with the crews where you see the deltas and we see what I'm going to tell you are a lot of commonalities with what this is. And a lot of the departmental focuses are really more on the call-out procedures, which is where I think you have really minimal delta from what the common has and what maybe department-specific has. Really for us, I think the focus is putting out on the table as far as these main safety points, whether it's stabilized approach, safe landing, commitment to stop, really structured briefing, and then like what you guys said, the debriefing, which I don't think has been properly emphasized. You kind of wave at each other and after the airplane's in the hangar and you're gone, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're missing a lot, especially as we move towards safety management systems and having to kind of have that reporting structure and have that feedback loop internally in our departments. The debrief is critical, and how that happens, it happens organically by us in the schoolhouses holding ourselves accountable, introducing it to you in kind of a non-combative, non-punitive way, encouraging you toward it. And as long as we maintain consistency, that's going to be best. Because you can imagine if I've got 1,500 crews I see a year and I have 1,500 SOPs, that instructor is not going to do that justice. Right?
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, Brian, let's start talking about at the training center. How is this going to be phased in? Sort of like, what do you see in the next 12 months, and what can we start to expect to see as we start to go back to the training center?
That's a great question. So, as you guys are probably aware on this podcast, that the training center environment is highly regulated. So we have the FAA and other authorities in our building all the time. So everything we put in front of you has some level of acceptance or approval by the regulator, right? So the initial phase of this, obviously getting to the point, having that structure with NBAA hosting, providing the mechanism for feedback and continuous improvement, that was a major first step, just getting across this. So now for us, just like in your flight departments, or if you have an air carrier certificate, it would have to go through yours. We have an approval process with our regulatory oversight. So we'll take that NBAA manual, we'll put the flight safety or CAE polish on that, maybe some additional information for the training environment. Then that has to go to the regulator for approval. So depending on how well we do our job, that approval process can take 30 days to 6 months, right, Tim? So what we're going to try to do is make sure that because we've socialized it in advance of this stage, we're doing a lot of direct communication with those oversight bodies, that we'll be able to see that approval process complete, in the next couple of weeks, right? And so then that part, having that solidified, it's that change management process with the instructor. So in our organizations, what we're doing is we've laid that framework with leadership on down, as far as being able to communicate that, kind of win the hearts and minds internally. We have e-learning, we've got the documentation that goes out, that's all that internal training environment. And the other thing that's helpful for a Part 142 provider is that just like you guys maintain annual currency, for us to maintain currency instructors, we've got to fly the aircraft, or we have to participate in a loft, simulation loft for flight experience. So what's helpful in that is that that's the dominant method of experience maintenance for us. So we can practice those SOPs internally in that instructor facilitated training environment to really help bring it home. Because reading the document is one thing, listening to the e-learning is another thing, but until you're out there doing it, it's just like international operations. You could take the class, but it's not until the first time that you do crosses using the tracks that it begins to really sink in. So that's for us. There's this initial methodology. Tim and I are thinking that with this intense focus, we can probably start seeing some delivery and training and briefing rooms and ground school and that kind of thing by the summer of 26.
Which is not that far away. I mean,
Not that far away.
That's impressive. Yeah. There's a technique, I think, Max, that you and I have used at the airlines, where often they are going to pair you off with somebody while you go through training, right? Like your sim partner or whatever. And that's often happens at CA and flight safety. But a lot of the time was spent, sitting in front of the paper cockpit, where we'd just be reading the checklist and reading the procedures and making the call outs. And I don't think that's something that for a lot of business aviation operators, you've done it. And to your point, Brian, you can read the document, go, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, nice. Okay, we're going to do, we're going to say this. So we're going to do that. But it's really going to take a time investment of sitting there with a shared mental model and reps, right? It's just going to be reps of going through with the call outs, going through with, do I say checklist complete or completed checklist? All that kind of stuff that, is just going to take time. And there will be a commitment on our side to get this, and it, like you said, it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm excited to hear that it's coming fairly soon. And Tim, a question for you: do you see this as, I'm filling out as a chief pilot, maybe I'm filling out the training request for some of my folks. Do I check a box that say I want to do the NBAA SOP training, or is that just that's stock that's coming for every training event now, or is there going to be an option, or how do you see that being implemented?
It will be pretty much stock standard. That'll be our default. That's our baseline, will be these SOPs once fully implemented. And then it would be the exception to the rule that if you wanted to use your own and leverage your own, that you would be uploading those. And it's a really interesting position to be in from an industry perspective. We had a lot of large operators that were supporting some of this work, which gave us the great ideas on what would work in business aviation or not. The EJMs, the Solaris and the jets that I had mentioned previously, there was also a direct question. I remember being in the meeting across the table and asking that directly: "Are you guys going to implement these SOPs?" And their answer was resoundingly absolutely, for all of the benefits that you talk about. Right? You guys are if you fly together, you may only have 2 pilots in your flight department. In fact, the majority of our customers at CAE, percentage wise, are less than 3 aircraft flight departments. So we're not a large portion of our business is also, of course, large air carriers where it more mimics the airlines. But those smaller operators, the majority of our customers, don't have anything formalized, and they don't go to training at the same time. So
Right.
if we have these standardized SOPs that transcend globally, it doesn't matter what NAA or National Aviation Authority it is, if it's conducted in Dubai or Burgess Hill or wherever it happens to be, you're always getting the same standard. The experience will be much better because it's consistency. It's a global airline as compared to just the one time you updated what's called a training tech authorization form, and the stars and moon aligned so that the person you were paired with actually read your document, which almost never happens, and that your experience in training actually was 1-to-1 with what you could expect when you fly the line. So it's really the larger picture, and I hope people also give that consideration, which is this is we're holding ourselves to a higher standard here for all the good reasons of safety. And even if they only chose 2 elements from that document a year, if we can move the needle on a couple of them, we're still on the better benefit side of this whole thing.
Yeah, when we were discussing this with some of the NBAA leadership, someone had chimed in, I think that worked at a staffing company, and he said, "This is one of the first things that we're going to work to implement for all of the pilots that we're going to be providing to customers. Is like, hey, this person is. I don't know if there's going to be a certification or some type of credential or something, but especially for these larger operations that provide contract pilots, like that's going to be a really good qualification that so okay, this person's coming to me, they have or I have an expectation of what they know, and as long as our operation is implemented that, then it's going to be easier to.
Yeah, think about that. I mean, think about how incredible that would be is you're hiring a contract pilot and they've been trained at CAE flight safety and here to the common SOP, right? You know what to expect. It mitigates that risk, it reduces that complexity, it gets rid of that first leg or 3 learning experience, for the 2 of you. So that's game changing, for all of us with respect to safety.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was going through my head. I was like, how do you motivate pilots? Well, all pilots are universally motivated by money. So if you say, oh, yeah, we only use, contractors that adhere to the NBAA SOP manual here, or you're not going to get any work, then I think that will be sufficiently motivating for most.
You would think.
I mean, you have to be realistic. The airlines, when they need the pilots to really work, they offer what's called double time. That's how they motivate people. So it's just kind of the same thing,
right? Kind of the same thing. Okay, so fellas, let's talk to the folks that are listening to this, and they're maybe starting to understand. Okay, that makes sense. Like I can see why this is existing. I can see it's going to take some work on my part. What can I do now? Right now, maybe I'm not going to training for 9 months or something like that. Is there something I can do to kind of get ready or get in the mindset, or what would you recommend to a listener, Brian?
So, I mean, first of all, I would go to the NBAA website. I would definitely download the SOP, start talking about it in your flight department, take a look at it. If you have an SOP developed, amongst yourselves, have those conversations in your department. Let's take a look at what is the industry moving towards? What are the training providers that we cross between, at least the 2 of us and others perhaps? What's the expectation that they're going to have? And for us, I mean, hold us accountable to this because we're going to certainly hold ourselves accountable and really try to encourage the industry out there to adopt. So go ahead and download that SOP. And the great thing is that if there's something that you see in there that you really have a opinion about, NBAA is providing that feedback forum, right? So that is the big deal, I think, for us is not only cross-provider adherence, but it's also the fact that we plan to support NBAA and the industry in annually looking at those comments, from the field, and then adapting, as the common SOP adapts.
Got it. Yeah. So it's potentially, you said maybe by this summer you can start to adopt some of this. Do you see like little call out guides being generated and something like that kind of being sent out before you go to training?
Or like videos that you can
or
watch?
videos, like have you thought about kind of how you're going to break the ice with people?
Yeah, it's a great question because obviously we have to do that break the ice internally, right?
Yeah.
So we've started developing some internal e-learning vignettes, but that's exactly the conversation as we're kind of in the TikTok phase of
Yeah.
pilot, right?
But
So
that's what I was going to say. Like, are we going to start to see TikTok videos? It might work,
I think so, right? So, I mean, I think about how people consume information right now. So what do? They listen to 21.5 podcast, right? That's where they're getting information and starting making them think about things. Training providers, I know, one of your sponsors is pretty good about putting out information and small vignettes. I mean, certainly I think that's on us too, as supporters of safety in this industry, in the training space, is finding those ways to reach you in advance. One of the things that the industry really wanted when we were developing this is that consolidated call outs table. So if nothing else, that's the easy thing that you guys can pull off, directly adopt into your programs to kind of begin thinking about from that particular aspect. But it's on us to try to provide some of those small couple of minute introductions to components. Like Max, you mentioned the stabilized approach or the latest touchdown point. Those are new concepts, right? And so you need to think about it in advance so that when you're at the training facility and then we're talking about it and we're actually implementing it, you've got that foundation. And I really think that YouTube, TikTok type of method is probably where we're going to go.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then try to reach people in advance. I think to prepare them is key. And that's the Appendix 1 is that summarized, consolidated in chronological order SOP list. And it's like a one pager. It's nothing significant to absorb. At CAE as well, we have a bit more of a formal channel that's available currently too, something that we're calling continuously optimized recurrent training, where we deploy practical, realistic database scenarios. And to complement what Brian's saying, there's also just a communication side of that whole thing, and we do something formalized, which comes from a KO framework, which is a facilitated debriefing, and having that conversation. Hey, what 3 things went well? What 3 things didn't? And we'll have extra emphasis in that in the spring version. We evolve ours every 6 months. And we'll have a specific edition regarding SOPs. So asking those direct questions, what's your familiarity with threat and air management? Are you aware of that the landing touchdown point assessment? And what are you doing about it? And just have the instructors have that conversation to hopefully spark some thought in case they hadn't heard about the industry SOPs. I mean, we get a lot of information in some of those confirmation emails, dates and times and locations, all that stuff, and they may or may not be receptive at that moment to dig in deeper. So I think it's going to take a bit of time. We can certainly put the information out there, but there's just so much information to consume. So bite-sized information, like you guys are saying, the shorter videos, less than a minute, quick topics. But even still, even if we spoon feed people, it's still going to take you to put it in your brain and to do almost like you guys said, that paper tiger kind of fly out and hold yourself accountable to making sure that you're working towards those correct SOPs and that you're implementing those briefings and that you're leading by example. So it's one of those professional things I think that we all need to hopefully see the value here for all the good reasons and work with our colleagues to expect this, to hold ourselves, not I wouldn't say accountable, but to hold ourselves to a higher standard so that we are reinforcing the safety element to this.
As well said, Tim. I think NBAA in the past had a professionalism campaign, and they were really trying to focus on that. And my one thought was, every pilot thinks they're a professional, right? They all are in the cockpit going, I'm doing a great job. I'm professional. And because there was no metric. there was no way to say, we're landing safely. My passengers are arriving. The rental car's there. And so there was no metric. There was no yard post to show like, yeah, well, these people are doing this SOP or they're flying in compliance with what everyone else is doing. Like, it's time to get on board. So that's another reason why I'm excited here, because there is now a standard. And look, one of the main reasons we started this podcast was because, especially as a Part 91 pilot, the onus is on you to educate yourself. And because there's very little that really you have to do. And you can slide by and with your head in the sand for quite a few things.
We've seen people do it for many years.
Many people, they just shut it off, and it's me and the other pilot, and that's it. And we're in our own hangar. We're doing our own thing, and we don't want to know what anyone else is doing because we've been doing it this way forever. And so this is the call to action to push yourself. And Max, I guess we're going to have to make some new rap songs and TikTok videos about, we got all sorts of different.
I would just encourage everybody not to look at this as something you need to decide if you want to do. Like, you have to do it. That's it. Treat it like you're at the airlines and you have to do it, because they've been doing it a long time at the airlines, and it's been proven to work very, very well. And I can tell you from personal experience in switching between, airliners and business jets, I take all of that stuff from the airline and I put it all in the business jet, and it is way better. I can tell you that from experience. And so I encourage everybody, it's not about, I want to be the best business jet pilot I can be, so I should probably do this. You have to do it. So, and it's one of those things, it's a lot. If you're not used to this stuff, it's a lot. So I wouldn't say, all right, on the next flight, we're going to do the touchdowns briefing, and we're going to do all these call outs, and we're like one piece at a time. Like you said, like, let's get the call outs done first, because once you get those figured out, then you don't even think about it. Just like I don't even think about it. It just comes out of my, it's literally zero thought required. It's just a reaction now, and then move on to the other stuff. But I can't stress enough how well done this is. Like, you guys really put in the work, and it's very impressive. So good for you guys. It's been very easy for me to say, oh, we should really do this. Somebody should. But you guys,
you're the somebody.
I'm great at talking the talk, but you guys walk the walk, and that's the hard part. So thank you guys for doing this. I think that this is like very, very important. You can tell I'm passionate about it. It is important. And if you're not doing this in your flight department, get going.
Another rant. We got another rant out of you guys.
Another rant. Yeah, I was going to say, listen, I love the threat and error management wrap. So any more of that, we can get the SOP wrap going. Then whatever we can
only
do
if
to
you
kind
promise to play it as people walk into their first day of initial training, Brian. If you can give us that commitment, it's playing in the lobby on registration
there you
day.
go. Like, what is
just
this?
on loop, right? Yeah,
just dropping these SOPs.
I love it. All right. Well, Brian, anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here? I know we've covered a lot and introduced a lot of new stuff to our listeners, but any parting thoughts or anything else you want to cover?
Listen, I think this really is something we can all get behind. It's not going to be a major deviation from what you're doing now. And if you don't have an SOP in your department currently, we've built this for you, right? So we're out there industry. So regardless of which training provider you choose, or you work between both of us or others, we are all as an industry working towards bettering safety, right? And so I encourage you to download it, review it, look at it ahead of time, provide some feedback, and we're just going to continue to get better and continue to kind of adapt training so that it's more in line with what you guys are looking for. And I would say you're going to see a lot of great changes coming up in the near future as the FAA is making changes, and ICAO is certainly making changes, and as providers we're trying to adapt to that and really find ways to kind of meet you where you want us to be, right, in training, because we want to be there too.
Well said. Tim, anything to add to that?
No, I appreciate the opportunity and the reach that you guys have. And I think the awareness is going to be should be part of all of our campaigns for a while, just to try to get the word out there. But high five, great. We've got it here, and there's that old adage that the last 5% is the hardest work to get that last piece done. And I think that's where we're at now. We're at the implementation phase. So great job to everybody that's been involved. And now I think is the part that it's going to take that last 5% is going to take a whole lot of effort and continually coming back to it. And also, as professionals, the ability for us to encourage others to pick it up and just ask questions. And hopefully that'll spark curiosity that people will read it and will adopt it.
And I think it's important to keep the discussion going. So to the listeners, if you are, especially if you're the person that we were talking about that's been flying with the same other pilot for the last 10 years and you're in your own little bubble, you know who you are, that, you're just doing your own thing in your hangar and blah, 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 and you implement this, or anybody else who does implement the SOPs as recommended here. Let us know how it goes. Communicate with the show. Send us message, email, form, all the things. And we'll be very interested. And I think it's important for us to share the implementation stories of people that this is very foreign to and very new, and see how it goes. So, and we'll be happy to read it on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, there will be some strategies people are going to find out. Brian, you mentioned at the top of the show that pilots are super willing to change at a moment's notice, and they're always willing to just drop their habits and everything, so it's going to be a challenge. But man, I really want to salute both of you, Brian and Tim, and the rest of the folks at the NBAA. And I know there's many people that contributed, and the incredible amount of work that you guys have created. And look, we make this sound like it's a 5,000-page document. It's 42 pages. You can do it. You can read it. We'll have a link in the show notes. Download it. Take a look. I think you're going to be really impressed with the way it's laid out. It's very approachable, I would say. And I think you're going to quickly see the value in adopting this document. We're excited that we can look forward to this at the training center. 2026 sounds like we'll start to see some of that. So, gentlemen, we really appreciate your time joining us, and we're looking forward to seeing how this will be implemented.
Thanks, Dylan and Max.
Thank you, guys.
Amazing podcast. You're doing a great job. We really appreciate you.
Remember, everybody, flexibility is the key to implementing standard operating procedures. We'll see you next time.
Nice PSA. Love it.
Yeah. Listen up. This ain't just another update. This is the new way we fly. NBAA put the blueprint down. SOPs, the playbook. FlightSafety and CAE in the huddle. One crew, one standard. All right, let's get into it. We on the ramp breaking ice with the early crew. Talking NBAA shift, something long overdue. Brian stepping in with the flight safety code. 10 years grinding out of doctrine unloads. No more how you fly versus how I fly. One script, one flow, keep the standards high. Stabilize gates, touchdowns on up front. Call outs tight, no mystery stunt. Airmanship level, when the language aligns. Same terms, same flows, cut the guessing signs. This the new wave, man, industry pedigree. Laying groundwork solid for the SOP. SOP in the game, bring the crew in tight. NBA has set the stage, now we doing it right. From the brief to the flare, keep it all on cue. One standard in the cockpit for me and you. Yeah, align that flow, that's how pros should be. Flight safety, CAE, bringing unity. It's the new wave, hitting biz, F skies. SOP locked in, now watch us rise. Then Tim from CAE stepped into the ride. Talking global rollout from the worldwide side. Dubai, Montreal, Burgess Hill on deck. Same rhythm, same calls, keep the cross fleet checkers. Part 91 pilots got a mixed bag crew. Sometimes meeting new co-pilots out of the blue. But one shared SOP keeps the workload clean. Less chaos, more bandwidth, more brain power seen. Touchdown point clarified, no more floating name. Threats mitigated when the whole team's same. This shift ain't optional, it's legacy. Biz ad future shaped by the SOP. SOP in the game, bring the crew in tight. NBA has set the stage, now we're doing it right. From the brief to the flare, keep it all on cue. One standard in the cockpit for me and you. Yeah, align that flow, that's how pros should be. Flight safety, CAE, bringing unity. It's the new wave, hitting biz, F skies. SOP locked in, now watch us rise.
statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.